and salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be giving book recommendations on tropes that you guys picked. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Trope Week. Hello, hi, yes, hello. It has been a while since we've talked, since we've chatted. I took a break in January, and here we are in the beginning of Trope Week. If you don't know what Trope Week is, it is a series that I do on my channel where I post videos back to back for an entire week. I pick a specific book trope, a romance book trope, and I give you a specific book recommendation for it. Today, I'm going to be doing kind of like a mashup of recommendations. I asked you guys on Instagram to give me a specific book trope, and I would give you guys some recommendations, and here we are. I picked like 15 tropes, so I'm going to try to be quick and give one book per trope and just give it to you guys. I asked you guys to be as specific as possible, and some of you really were. So let's just hop right in. So someone asked for a romance book where the heroine is disguised as a boy, but the hero sees right through it. I have this book somewhere on my shelves, but I don't know where it is. It's hidden. I couldn't find it. But the one I want to recommend is Gentle Rogue by Johanna Lindsey. This is the third book in the Mallory Anderson series, but you can absolutely read this book as a standalone. I sure in the heck did. This is probably my favorite Johanna Lindsey book. This is a historic romance, follows our heroine Georgina. She is headed to meet a man that she believed she was betrothed to. They kind of made a deal when they were kids that if they reach a certain age and they weren't married, they would marry each other. Well, she ends up meeting this man and finding out that he did not keep their deal and is actually married and with kids and living a whole other life. So she is kind of devastated, but more so annoyed, and wants to leave to go home as soon as possible. And the only available option is a pirate ship where she has to pretend to be a boy. She dresses up as a boy and pretends to be the cabin boy for our hero, James Mallory, and he sees right through her shenanigans. And this also has a little bit of a forced proximity trope because she is his cabin boy. She has to stay in the same room as him. The romance takes place both on sea and then once they reach land, and I adore this series. If I'm looking down, it's literally because I'm looking at my notes so I don't forget anything. Somebody said that it wasn't a specific trope they were asking for, but they just want an epic romance that is just over the top and sweeping. I have the book for you. I really do, and I know I talk about this book so much, but I just think it is the most romantic book I've ever read in my life. That is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins, and yes, I did find an original copy. And I'm very happy about it, but let's just move on. So this is a historical romance that takes place in America and takes place during the Underground Railroad. Our heroine, she actually is a part of the Underground Railroad and has really dedicated her life to helping enslaved African Americans. Our hero, she ends up meeting him under his moniker the Black Daniel when he is injured, and she kind of nurses him back to health. He also has dedicated his life to freeing Black slaves, and that's how they meet, and it follows their romance, and it is divine. The setting is so beautifully written. The romance is so beautifully written. I loved both of our characters deeply. I can't even like put into words how much I love this book. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but I will say this has the most romantic proposal. The most romantic wedding proposal I have ever read about in my life. It's amazing. Beverly Jenkins is flawless. This is probably my favorite book by her. I know I've mentioned it before, but it is just that good. So someone else asked for an age gap romance, and I do have an age gap video on my channel that I will link down below if you want even more recs. I am also doing an age gap romance video in this trope week where the heroine is older, so you will have a dedicated video to that as well. I actually think that's going to be tomorrow's video. But if you just want me to give you like one quick recommendation, I would probably recommend Slow Heat by Leda Blake. And this is an Omegaverse. If you guys are unfamiliar of what an Omegaverse book is, it is basically kind of like Werewolf Shifters, where you have an alpha and an omega and they usually bond, but it's a little bit more intense than that. And this book is a male-male romance, and it has MPreg, which basically means that alpha men can get omega men pregnant in this universe. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyways, this book does have an age gap. In this universe, there is like specific schools for alphas and specific schools for omegas, and they keep them separated until it is time for them to bond. But our hero Jason, he is like 18, 19 years old. He is in school and he ends up finding his omega because he is a professor at the school. This has quite a bit of an age gap. I believe it's like 15 years or something like that, and it is a little bit taboo because the omega is the older one in the situation, and in usually this type of dynamic the alpha is supposed to be the older one, and it is so freaking emotional. This does have a lot of trigger warnings, just so you know. You could really feel the love that our characters had for each other, and this book made me cry so freaking hard. And I loved how our hero Jason, who is the younger alpha, really didn't care about their age gap and just was like so in love with his mate the second he laid his eyes on him. And it was, yeah, this book is so freaking good. My good friend Avery asked for a book with chronic illness rep. And for this one, I'm going to probably recommend Trouble and Strife by Laura Kinsey. This is a short novella that is available on Kindle Unlimited. This is the second book in a series, but you can read it out of order because they are shorter novellas. It is a historical romance that follows our characters Elizabeth and Sydney. Sydney is a part of the Chance brothers, which is basically, it's kind of like a gang. They kind of rule this underground of London. He's tall and really broad, and he has always been known as the enforcer of the family, but really he is just like a gentle giant. He is also openly bisexual, and I just loved his character so much. He meets our heroine in a bake shop. She is a baker, and it follows their romance. Our heroine is the one who has a chronic illness that causes her severe pelvic pain. So intercourse and sexual intimacy has proven to be really painful for her. She really needs a partner that is gentle with her, and that is exactly what Sydney is. Sydney is a little bit more submissive and she's a little bit more dominant, and their relationship just works so well. Okay, somebody asked for a historical romance with children of the hero a part of the plot. And for this one, I'm going to recommend the Highlander series by Caretaking. This is the third or fourth book in the Victorian Rebel series, but you can read it out of order. The book follows our characters Liam and Mina. Mina has quite a dark past. This does have some trigger warnings for sexual assault. A lot of Caretaking books tend to explore darker themes, so just make sure to read the Goodreads reviews if you need those trigger warnings. Our heroine was previously married and forced into an insane asylum by her husband and treated poorly. She ends up escaping to the Highlands to really reinvent herself and create a new life for herself, and that is how she meets our hero Liam, because she gets hired to be his children's governess. So she gets hired to take care of the children and teach them, but it follows their romance, and this is a Scottish romance, and our hero, he's like this big stoic hero, but ends up completely falling for our heroine, and it is absolutely adorable. I love it. I highly recommend it. So the next recommendation that someone wanted was, I am setting you up with another person and oops, we fall in love instead. This is a very specific trope, but ironically enough, it's one of my favorites and I have many. So I'm gonna give you two for this one. The first one is a classic, and if you haven't read this book, I don't know what to tell you. It is truly a classic, and it is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. This is a contemporary romance that has consistently stayed one of my favorite books. It was one of the first books I read once I got back into romance as an adult, and it just made me fall in love with the genre. So this is a friends to lovers romance. Josh and Hazel knew each other from college, but they kind of end up reconnecting. Hazel works with Josh's sister. Hazel is a teacher, so they end up reconnecting at a party, and Hazel is very bold and bright and eccentric and one of the most hilarious heroines I've ever read about. But kind of the premise though is that they set each other up with some blind dates. So they set each other up with their friends and blind dates, and they go on these insane random dates with other people, but then they end up falling for each other instead, and it is so cute. Josh is like the epitome of a cinnamon roll. If you like that type of hero, I highly recommend picking this one up. if you haven't already. And then I'm going to recommend one more because I'm sure a lot of you have already read that book. The one I want to recommend is Perfect Matcha by Erin McLennan. This is a novella available on Kindle Unlimited, and it is a male-male romance. Our hero has been in love with his best friend forever, but his best friend actually used to date one of their other mutual friends, and it didn't end well, so he never really wanted to ruin their friendship and have the same thing happen. So our other hero, his ex-boyfriend is getting married and he's invited to the wedding, and he's not really attached to his ex-boyfriend anymore, but he doesn't want to show up to the wedding alone either. Like, that would be lame. So he is looking for a date, and that is where our other hero comes in. And this hero, he actually works at a sex toy shop, and he decides to set his friend up on these blind dates, but also introduce him to some sex toys to kind of boost his confidence a little bit. And it starts a romance. This one is very, very, very steamy and wonderful and perfectly written. Erin McLennan knows how to write a novella, let me tell you that. The next one that someone wanted was a grumpy sunshine romance, and my favorite, I'm pretty sure I talk about this book a lot too, and that is A Beastly Kind of Earl by Mia Vinci. I will not shut up about this book because I feel like Mia Vinci doesn't get that much credit here on BookTube, and her books are fantastic, even though she only has like 3 of them. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our heroine, Thea, she's kind of like the black sheep of the family. Years ago, her reputation got ruined by some boys who were just lying, basically, and she is determined to write a book and kind of let the entire ton know her truth and that she is innocent, to really get her reputation back. In the midst of all of that, her sister is betrothed to marry an earl that she really doesn't want to marry. So Thea decides to dress up as her sister and pretend to be her sister to get her out of this marriage. Our hero, he kind of knows that something is up, that something is not right, but he's not really telling the truth either. The only reason that he wants to get married is because in order to gain his inheritance, he has to get remarried. And he has a lot of secrets in his past, lives all by himself, and is like the complete opposite of our sunshine heroine, Thea, who loves to play pranks and is just super bright and cheery. So this one is a great grumpy sunshine romance, but also a good Beauty and the Beast retelling, historical romance as well. Right, the next trope is a romance book that has like nursing or caretaking in it, and I did mention Indigo. Our heroine does take care of our hero in that book, but for this trope, I'm going to recommend Spitfire by Christy Caldwell. This is the last book in the Wicked Wallflower series. This series is available on Kindle Unlimited with the audiobook, and yet again, this is another book I talk a lot about on my channel because it is amazing. So basically, this follows our heroine, who is a courtesan, an ex-courtesan, prostitute, whatever word you want to use. She ends up meeting our hero in the streets of London after he is jumped and badly beaten. Ends up actually saving him and taking him back to her house and nursing him back to health. That is the beginning of the book and where the caretaking aspect comes in. They end up parting ways, but it turns out that our hero is actually a duke, and the way that they reconnect is our hero is a part of Parliament, and he accidentally sends her a letter to close her opera house. When she finds out about this, she is real pissed and goes to confront him, and it follows their romance. Somebody asked for polyamorous romances, and boy oh boy, have you come to the right place. Polyamorous romances are my favorite thing. They are my favorite thing. I love romances with more than just 2 people. Give me 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Give it to me, please. I love polyamorous romances. I love reverse harems. I do have dedicated videos to both of those tropes already, so if you want more recommendations, they will be linked down below. But for this one, I'm going to recommend The Queen's Line by Catherine Moon. This is a 3-part fantasy romance series that's available on Kindle Unlimited, and it is fabulous. Fabulous. It is wonderful. It is divine. Catherine Moon really goes there in this book, and I appreciate that. So basically, let me tell you the premise. Our heroine, she is a princess of this kingdom, and she belongs to a family that is supposedly has this power called the hunger. And basically what this is that they are empowered by sexual intimacy. So they take many consorts and many men and kind of involve them in their harem, and the more sexual intimacy they have, supposedly the kingdom grows stronger and thrives under that power. It has never really felt like that strong sexual desire and connection. She loves her kingdom, and she knows that the only way to rule as a queen is if she starts to take a harem of men. Heroine does have the hunger and she does have power, and it kind of presents itself in a very unique way. I feel like I'm doing this series an injustice by explaining it because it is so unique and so beautifully written. I would consider this like a reverse harem / poly romance. She ends up finding 6 men that she involves in her harem and has a very special connection with. The men also have some pre-existing relationships, and they also kind of bond emotionally and sexually with each other as well, so it's not just focused on the heroine. But this one honestly is just amazing. Like I cannot explain this book well enough. I just need you to read it because it's so unique in the premise, and I feel like you would really like it if you like reverse harem and poly romances. Right, so the next one, somebody asked for an event planner romance, and I have one. I do. It is Pan by Gina L. Maxwell. This is another book on Kindle Unlimited, and this is kind of a contemporary retelling of Peter Pan and Wendy Darling. It is a second chance romance between our characters. They had a very intense connection when they were younger. In this book, Peter Pan is an orphan who comes from a rougher part of town, and he ends up having a romance with Wendy. Wendy has a family that is very wealthy and has a lot of expectations for her. So when she gets a little bit older, she ends up leaving Peter to go to this really prestigious college and kind of be the person that her family wants her to be. And he is heartbroken. So sad. But she ends up coming back, and she is an event planner, and she is planning this huge party for like this charity, and the theme is like old retro, auction off an old style car. So she needs a mechanic to help her rebuild this old style car, which is where Peter Pan comes in. He is a mechanic, and he specializes in custom cars. So they end up reconnecting for the party, and it follows the romance. It is such a good second chance romance. The pining, the longing, everything. I think this book is so underrated, and I need more people to read it. Next trope that someone asked for was Groveling. And I love a good grovel romance. I really do. I really do. The book I want to recommend is Bully by Jessica Cain. So this is a bully romance. I will give that trigger warning, but it is the best bully romance and the only bully romance I will actually recommend. So our characters have this like really intense attraction to each other, and they have this really great chemistry and moment one night. There's like a thunderstorm, and they end up meeting each other and really falling for each other. But the next day, our heroine kind of snubs our hero, and he takes offense to that. He thinks that she is being stuck up because he comes from a rougher part of town and her family's really wealthy. So he thinks that she is judging him and decides to bully her because, you know, he got his feelings hurt. Our heroine actually did that because her father is both physically and emotionally abusive, and she knows that if he found out about that relationship, it would be a huge problem. In this book, our hero does find out what our heroine is going through and feels horrible, and he grovels. He grovels, and he gets her out of that bad situation and then proceeds to just absolutely worship her, and I loved it. It's a very short novella. It's only like maybe 90 pages, but our Miss Jessica Cain, with her amazing writing, fit the best book. Like, this is one of my favorite books. It has so much pining and groveling and attraction and chemistry and oh my gosh, all the things. It's so good. The last trope that we're gonna do, because I'm getting a little hot in the sweater. The last one is a book that has mutual pining, and for that I'm gonna recommend Surrender by Risley Adams. This is another novella on Kindle Unlimited. Risley Adams really does write some phenomenal books. So this book follows our characters to college together, and they always were friends, and they never really took their friendship to like the next level till the night that they graduate and they're supposed to head to like opposite sides of the country. They decide to play a game of like truth or dare / spin the bottle, and they have like this really intense moments and chemistry with one another, but they're supposed to leave each other. So our hero comes up with kind of like a game that if they're single in a certain amount of years, they will meet back up and they will spend like the weekend together. And so that's exactly what happens. They go off and they live their lives. One of them gets married and divorced, but it turns out at this time they are both single and they decide to kind of like keep the pact they made when they were just kids, and they spend the weekend together, and it is really spicy, and they both just like mutually obsess over each other. This also has a little bit of a BDSM element to it since our hero is a little bit more dominant, and I thought it was just beautiful. Love the chemistry, love the story, love Risley Adams. All right, so that was a really long video. I apologize, but I hope you guys got some books out of this. You will be seeing more book recommendation videos throughout the week. Tomorrow's video is going to be, which one are we posting first? I think it's going to be the age gap romance recommendation video where the heroine is older. So if you guys are looking forward to that, stay tuned till tomorrow. I will see you then. As always, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the absolute world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.